There is a kind of tiredness that doesn't show in the eyes, but lives deep in the chest. It is a subtle exhaustion, as if the world were always one step ahead, demanding speed, answers, perfection. Meanwhile, inside, you only long for a moment of silence, a moment of peace that doesn't need to be conquered, only felt. Maybe you know this feeling well. The body tense without an apparent reason. The mind restless even when everything is calm. The heart overly sensitive to what happens outside. It isn't drama. It isn't weakness. It is the invisible weight of living in a constant state of alert, as if something were always about to collapse, and it were your duty to keep everything under control. This is the silent pain of emotional hypervigilance, being whole on the outside and in pieces on the inside. This hypersensitivity to what happens outside you, this constant concern with what others think, with what might go wrong, with what you still haven't achieved, creates an invisible, yet powerful tension. And it is precisely this tension, this excess of wanting to control, of wanting immediate answers, that blocks the vibrational field where manifestation happens. Because the universe doesn't respond to words spoken out loud, but to the subtle vibration behind them. And when that vibration comes loaded with urgency, with neediness, or with fear, the reality that manifests is not the one you so deeply desire, but rather the one that corresponds to your disorganized inner field. Bruce Lipton teaches us that our genes are not a fixed destiny. They are deeply influenced by the environment, but not only by the external environment, mainly by the internal environment. The emotional state in which you live daily shapes your body, your mind, and the reality that unfolds around you. That's why, when you choose not to react, when you choose neutrality, inner silence, the non-immediate response, you are, in fact, reprogramming your biology. You are teaching your body that it no longer needs to live in defense, in survival. And in that space of stillness, new genetic codes can be activated. The body begins to vibrate in coherence, and reality begins to change. Joe Dispenza complements this view with quantum physics applied to consciousness. He shows us that reality is not something fixed, defined. It is a dance of possibilities that collapse, or not, according to our state of observation. But the most important detail is this. Quantum collapse only happens with true potency when the observer is emotionally detached. When there is anxious expectation, the field contracts. But when there is presence, surrender, and neutrality, the field expands. And it is there, in that full emptiness, where you demand nothing from the universe, that the universe can finally deliver everything. It is important to undo a misconception that often paralyzes sensitive and spiritualized people, that indifference is coldness. It is not. True vibrational indifference is not apathy, nor denial, nor emotional detachment. It is, in fact, a state of deep centeredness. It is when the mind finally stops sabotaging what the heart desires, when the soul stops defending itself and finally begins to receive. The indifference we speak of here is a silent power, a vibrational state where you no longer need to react to everything, prove anything, convince anyone. It is a point of balance where you are not pulled outside yourself, because you have learned to remain whole, even when everything around you is collapsing. Imagine bamboo. It doesn't resist the wind. It doesn't face the storm with rigidity. It bends, it yields, it dances with what comes, but it does not break, because it is flexible on the outside, but unshakable on the inside. This is the metaphor of vibrational indifference. You are not oblivious to life. You are in deep harmony with it. But instead of reacting compulsively, you respond with presence. Instead of fighting against, you observe. And in that space between impulse and action, a new field is born. A field where what you desire is no longer blocked by anxiety. Where manifestation happens not because you forced it, but because you allowed it. Maybe you've never heard this before. But your healing begins when you stop fighting with reality, when you choose not to be dragged by the waves, but to observe the ocean from within your own breath. The world will still provoke you. Life will still test you. But you no longer need to react to everything, because now, maybe for the first time, you understand. Indifference is not absence. It is elevated presence. It is the wisdom of someone who already knows that the universe works best when the heart is at peace. There is a kind of anxiety that disguises itself well. It uses beautiful words, lofty intentions, even fervent prayers. But behind every positive thought, there is a hidden urgency. I need this to happen. And what if it doesn't work out? What if I'm forgotten? And it's at this point that something very subtle and deeply self-sabotaging happens. When intention is born from a place of lack, even when wrapped in spirituality, the vibrational field it emits is not one of creation, but of scarcity. And the universe, as sensitive as it is, does not respond to the sentence that comes out of your mouth, but to the frequency vibrating from your body. This frequency doesn't lie. It reveals everything. The fear behind the request, the doubt hidden in the desire, the despair disguised as faith. Neuroscience helps us understand why. Whenever we want something intensely but don't believe it's possible or deserved, the body enters into conflict. On one side, the dopamine of hope. On the other, the cortisol of frustration. This imbalance creates an incoherent inner field, and where there is incoherence, there is no conscious creation. Bruce Lipton reminds us that the body is the transmitter of our truest vibration. And when the nervous system is in a state of alert, even if the face is smiling, even if the words say gratitude, what is emitted into the quantum field is tension, despair, resistance. The truth is that wanting something badly by itself doesn't manifest anything. Most of the time, wanting it so much only reveals how far you feel from what you desire, how much you still believe something is missing in you to deserve it. And the universe, in its vibrational precision, responds to this perceived absence, not to your worthiness, but to your belief. The law of attraction is not a game of phrases. It is a mirror of your inner state. It doesn't respond to what you say. It responds to what you vibrate when you are alone, in the dark, when no one is watching. When you want something so intensely that it hurts, perhaps what is being manifested without you realizing it is the pain of waiting, the pain of non-fulfillment, the pain of being separated from what is already yours, but which has not yet found fertile soil to bloom. So maybe the question isn't, what do I want to manifest? But rather, what is the real frequency behind my desire? Because that is what the universe hears. That is what the quantum field picks up. Not what you say, but what you vibrate when you believe no one is listening. There is a place where spirituality stops being healing and becomes just another form of control. A subtle space where the search for evolution turns into a need disguised as perfection, where I need to trust transforms into I need to see signs all the time. And when those signs don't come, doubt, frustration, and questioning arise, not because something went wrong, but because the spiritual ego, hungry for validation, cannot stand the silence of the quantum field. Maybe you've lived through this cycle, making affirmations every day, visualizing with dedication, maintaining positive thinking, yet feeling deep inside that nothing is moving. And then the inner pressure begins. Am I doing it right? Am I not vibrating enough? Has the universe forgotten me? But the truth is deeper. It's not about intensity, but coherence. It's not about ritual, but surrender. When the spiritual search becomes a performance, the field closes. Because the vibration being emitted is not one of connection, but of demand. It's like trying to control life with sweet words and sophisticated mantras, without realizing that the real power lies in not knowing, in not controlling, in allowing yourself to live in the emptiness between request and response. There is a false awakening that imprisons. It wears the garments of the sacred, but is fed by the fear of not evolving fast enough, by the urgency of showing the world how conscious, aligned, awakened you are. And in this effort, the soul gets lost. Because it doesn't need to prove anything. It only needs to be, to feel, to breathe, Pure intention is not shouting at the universe what you want. It is trusting that the universe has already heard, and that life is moving, even when you can't see it. The difference between authentic faith and disguised vibrational control is the peace you feel even in silence, even in waiting, even in the absence of any sign. True indifference is born from this space. It is not giving up. It is not denial. It is conscious surrender. It is the deep understanding that you no longer need to chase after what is already yours by essence. It is knowing that what is coming doesn't depend on your effort, but on your presence. And this presence only blossoms in inner silence, the kind where the spiritual ego no longer has a voice, and the soul can finally breathe. This is the point where manifestation becomes natural, when you no longer ask, demand, or interpret all the time. You simply exist. And in this state, the universe realigns, not by force, but by resonance. There is a silent force that transforms reality without apparent effort. It is what the masters call detachment. But detachment is not forgetting what you desire. It is not stopping dreaming, nor is it an act of giving up. To detach, in the vibrational language of the universe, is to trust so deeply that it is no longer necessary to desire with intensity, because inside you something already knows. What is yours doesn't need to be forced. Manifestation happens in the invisible, and the invisible only moves with coherence. When you vibrate as if you already were, as if you already had, as if you were already living what you desire, the field responds. Neville Goddard teaches that the true creator does not wait to see in order to believe. He believes and therefore sees. He does not fight against time. He lives the inner time of fulfillment, where the already is replaces the not yet. Intense desire, no matter how legitimate, carries within itself a shadow, the shadow of absence, the energy of someone who needs, who depends, who still doesn't feel they have. And it is this absence that manifests, not the desire itself. Because the universe is precise. It returns what you vibrate, not what you want. This is where the paradox reveals itself. The more you let go, the more things flow. The less you try to control, the more everything reorganizes. Letting go is trusting in the field of infinite possibilities, even without guarantees. It is ceasing to want what you desire in order to become what you desire. And this only happens when time stops being an enemy and becomes an ally. Divine timing does not follow the hands of the clock. It responds to the vibrational maturity of your consciousness. It acts when your frequency aligns with what you wish to receive. And this only happens when wanting gives way to being. Imagine an architect who hands his blueprint to an engineer. He trusts that the project will be built. He doesn't return to the construction site every day to doubt, inspect, or demand proof. He knows what he planted. And because he trusts, he waits. And while he waits, he already lives internally the reality that has not yet manifested outwardly. This is the true power of manifestation. Not to desire strongly, but to dwell with faith. Not to ask again, but to give thanks as if you already had it. Not to watch anxiously, but to walk lightly, because one who already is doesn't need to prove, only to be. And this state of being transforms everything. It is possible to be at peace even when everything around you screams the opposite. It is possible to feel presence even in the face of chaos. But this doesn't happen through effort. It happens through practice. Practice of seeing, practice of feeling, practice of not reacting. Active neutrality is not passivity. It is vibrational maturity. It is the ability to remain whole when the world tries to break you into pieces. To be silent inside without disconnecting outside. To observe without absorbing. It all begins with the body, because it is in the body that anxiety shows up first. It is in the body that reactivity explodes before the mind can even understand. That's why the first step is to train the nervous system not to react on impulse. And this training is not intellectual. It is sensory. It is daily. It is vibrational. Imagine a situation in which something provokes you, a word, a look, a memory. Instead of reacting, you breathe 3 times, deeply. And as you breathe, you ask yourself, is this emotion mine? Or just an old reflection of what I've lived? By recognizing that you are not what you feel, but the one who feels, you already begin to free yourself. This is the principle of vibrational metacognition, observing thoughts and emotions as if watching a river, without drowning in them, without clinging, without identifying. When you observe without judgment, something magical happens. The energy of what affects you begins to lose its strength, and what once controlled you dissolves. Bruce Lipton reminds us that it is not enough to think differently. You must feel differently, because unconscious beliefs only transform when the body believes the new state is safe, natural, familiar. And this doesn't happen in tension. It happens through the consistent practice of presence. Presence that embraces, that recognizes, that allows. And because of that, it transforms. Active neutrality is a magnetic field. When you are not easily shaken, not because you hardened, but because you deepened, something changes. External reality begins to respect you. People feel it. Situations test you less, because you become less vulnerable to interference and more available to alignment. This neutrality is not coldness. It is wisdom. It is the strength of someone who has learned that not every emotion needs a response, that not every thought needs to be believed, that not every wave needs to be surfed. Sometimes true strength is simply being there, steady, silent, whole, while everything passes, because everything passes. And what remains is the frequency you chose to hold, even when everything seemed determined to pull you away from it. Imagine a lake, a deep, silent lake, untouched by the wind. Its waters are so calm that they reflect the sky with perfection. The stars there are not just points of light. They are clear, real images, mirrored on the still surface. Now imagine that this lake is your mind, and that the desires you carry can only become visible when the water finally calms, when the mind is restless, when the heart beats with urgency, when thoughts run without pause. The image of what you desire becomes distorted. It loses definition. It grows blurry, unstable, unfocused. And the quantum field, which responds not to what you say, but to what you emit, cannot clearly recognize what it should collapse into reality. That is why the state of serenity is not an aesthetic option. It is a vibrational necessity. The stillness of the soul is not a spiritual luxury. It is a portal of creation. When you enter this state of deep calm, something opens. You no longer force. You no longer chase. You simply sustain a frequency where the universe can at last mirror what you are. This is the beauty of nothing bothers me. Not because you became insensitive, but because you learned not to let the external world dictate the quality of your internal field. It is a serenity that does not depend on what happens, but on the presence you cultivate within yourself. It is the clarity of someone who understands that the lake only reflects the stars when it is at peace. The field of manifestation is subtle. It does not respond to noise. It responds to alignment, and alignment only manifests in inner silence. In the space between one thought and another, in the pause between a desire and its surrender, in the moment when being becomes more important than having. Perhaps for so long you have tried to move reality with effort, with intentions, with words, with techniques, but maybe all that was missing was allowing the water to still, for the noise to quiet, for the image to finally appear, because it was always there. But the haste of the mind kept you from seeing it. And when that image arises, clear, real, alive, there is no more doubt. You are not distant from what you desire. You are becoming the mirror where the invisible reveals itself, and everything that once seemed unreachable begins to recognize its way back to you. In the end, it's not about desiring more strongly. It's about vibrating more purely. It's not about asking with urgency. It's about feeling with truth, Real transformation happens in the place where the soul no longer screams because it already knows it has been heard, where the heart no longer begs because it already feels that what it longed for already is. Bruce Lipton shows us that wanting is not enough. The body must believe, and the body only believes when you repeat not just thoughts, but emotional states coherent with what you want to live. Emotions felt with the whole body, with the skin, with the breath, with the vibration that emanates when no one is watching. Because that's where change becomes cellular. That's where the new program begins to replace the old, not through effort, but through emotional consistency. Neville Goddard reminds us the true creator lives as if it already were. He doesn't wait for the miracle to feel gratitude. He feels gratitude, and the miracle draws near. He doesn't need to see the result in order to trust, because he knows that everything is already in motion, even if the eyes cannot yet see. The silent creator does not demand proof. He becomes the very evidence, because his vibration is the truest testimony of what is about to be revealed. And perhaps, deep down, you already know this. You've already felt it. You've already experienced moments when, without wanting anything, everything began to flow. When the absence of pressure brought abundance. When neutrality revealed paths. When the simple state of being present was enough to move realities. Alchemy happens when desire ceases to be lack and becomes presence. When what you want stops screaming and begins to whisper within you, "I already am." This is the vibration that transforms, that creates, that rebuilds. So, what if your greatest strength is precisely in not fighting, in not chasing, in no longer proving anything? What if your greatest power is the serenity of someone who vibrates what they desire, even before it happens? Because the one who already vibrates already lives, and the one who already lives already manifests. Allow yourself this state, not as an escape, not as common indifference, but as a fertile space, a silent, deep, and real space where the invisible blooms, where the universe whispers back, "I hear you," because deep down, it always did. It was only waiting for you to become the reflection of what was always yours.